In MMOs, you don't really have this because in MOBAs, you always start at level 1. In MMOs, you don't always start at level 1. Well, I mean, you do, but not like in terms of combat. So, when we talk about MMOs and their fundamental problem, it's that they use gear as their stat check, and they don't really take into consideration for skill, and they wait until end game content to apply skill. Hey guys, what's up? Name's Lloyd. I have been playing a lot of Lost Ark lately, and I have been thinking about Ashes of Creation in quite a lot of detail when it comes to MMO in esports, doing certain loot tables for Ashes of Creation, and one that particularly got me really invested in like a little thought tangent is gear and character progression in Ashes of Creation. So far we haven't really seen much of it, but you can kind of like assume certain logical progression paths, and so I kind of created something up in Paint beforehand because I'm a little bit terrible with drawing, so I had to have some extra time, and you will see probably the limits of my artistic skills, especially when it comes to mouse. So when I'm looking at this is you have basically 3 levels of progression. You have character progression, you have gear progression, and you have variable progression. Variable progression is kind of like a new term, but that's specifically for nodes. From what I can think of, there could be like other forms of variable progression. Like you could even say like XP debt is a form of variable progression. So like I guess we'll get to it when we get to it. But for character progression, um let me try to uh note something here that I don't have written down. There's vertical progression where usually it's by level. Your character level, your gear level, your node level um kind of determines vertical progression. And horizontal progression, which is either time, gold, or just like going further in the story, um progressing along to get to a specific point. Now or like even getting certain amount of resources per se. So this could even be like XP. This is gold, material, like raw materials or whatever for nodes, right? So there's horizontal progression and then there's vertical progression. And a lot of the times you'll see um in MMOs that the max vertical progression is your character level. So you have, all right, that's one way to do a 5. Okay. You have your level 50 and it took you X amount of time to get there, right? Um so this generally looks like this until you reach level 50. And then your gear progression, say I don't really know the best way to do this. Your gear progression usually stays on par with your level, you like your character level. But once you reach max level, your gear progression becomes notably your max level is now your lowest level for gear progression. This is called end game content. Basically, once you reach max level, what do? It's end game content. And to make players innately feel better, or to get some sort of perspective of like, well, I did everything in the game, and to make them keep playing the game, you have to keep increasing your vertical progression because you've already reached so you've already reached the max you can horizontally. So what I mean, so variable progression, this is no longer level, and this is no longer time and resources. Variable progression, this is your gear. Yep, gear. Here, you know what? I have a better way to do this because I'm ass at everything else. This is now gear progression, and this is character progression. So once um you reach max level, level 50 here, now your gear is now the max level, or is what you're trying to get max level. So say over time, this, oh gosh, this is gonna be crazy. 50. What actually happens is this is also 50, right here, that's also 50, and the time it takes you to get there, oh wow, why did I do that? Okay, the time it takes you to get there, this would be uh this would be like you've reached level 50, right? This bar for your character level. So what happens is there's like some linear phase where you hit level 50 right around here, and then your gear progression starts, and gear progression starts looking like this as well. So your item level or your gear level starts increasing as they add more expansions or DLC or whatever. And maybe sometimes, like WoW, they'll give you a bonus and say this, now your max level is 60. Now your max level is 70, you know, whatever. And it'll make you seem like you're growing horizontally, but really it's all behind the mask of like getting higher item level, getting better equipment so that you can do harder dungeons or harder raids so that you can keep progressing that way. And honestly, this runs into quite a few issues, especially when you have so many like metagamers nowadays. Um, you're no longer caring about like previous content, and which is why I think that variable progression in Ashes of Creation is actually really, really good here. So I think it, now we make this nodes, right? Now your node starts at level 0. Over time, and with X amount of resources, you start increasing your node. Well, I guess this wouldn't be 5 here. It would be 5 over here. If I read things better, that's what happens, right? So now you're at a metropolis state. Well, that's not always guaranteed to always have this metropolis state just keep on going up. What could actually happen, and what is most likely to happen, is that, okay, you get your node, and then you're there for a little bit, takes you a little bit of time, and then somebody knocks you down, and then you go up again, and you go up again, and then eventually you're in a metropolis, right? So your path looks, oops, your path looks more like this. So instead of linear, you have a bit of variable change here with nodes, which is a really, really good thing. However, when I look at this variable change, the only people that are really going to be able to do this is end game content. This is all end game content, this variable progression. So even when you're like level 5 as a character, you're probably not involving yourself in this at all, right? So it is very difficult for new players to get involved in the end game content until they finish the leveling process, which is not supposed to be easy for Ashes of Creation, right? So now you're faced with the task of like, how do I keep up with end game content if gear progression keeps getting added on after max level? And I think this is the main issue that I'm seeing in Lost Ark, and that I have seen in Lost Ark over the last couple of years, is that people reach combat level 50 and now you're chasing item level, um like all the way up. What is it now, like 1650 or something like that? I don't know, 1600 something, to do different raids and different things. So you get a new player base come in and they're like, oh boy, I made level 50, now let me go do end game content. And their majority of the player base is here in this area with their gear level. And so they have this entire gap in this area that is completely useless content, right? So the good thing about nodes is that once you reach endgame, this variable progression isn't completely useless. This is reusable content because you are constantly fighting over nodes, correct? So this, I think, is already a very, very good structure and a good way to bring new players into already existing environments and to have them exist in a population where all the players are already at. So I think that's good. I think there are some issues that come along with that, like caravans, castle sieges, node sieges, things like that. A level 5 player may not be able to defend their home because of gear or character level. So I think what really uh needs to happen, or like at least be thought about, is, are node sieges, castle sieges done on a balanced like PvP, um like everybody's level 50 with static gear and everything like that, like PvP is for Lost Ark. So if I were to go here and I were to look at this and I go to my book of coordination, I have certain stat points and stuff that I can alternate into all of my abilities and skill up. And I can just join a random PvP mode, and everybody has these same options, right? So like if I wanted to check everything, like, look, I'm 10 and everything, but I'm level 40, so technically I don't have this many skill points. It's giving me 340 skill points, but realistically I only have 165. So is that something that we think about when we are doing castle sieges, or is it or like node sieges? But I don't see it happening for caravans at all. And then also another thing to think about is when it comes to variable progression now, right? We are no longer talking about nodes, but what we're going to be talking about here is corruption. Oh god, this is going to be awful. Corruption. Hopefully I can just like edit this part out. Maybe I won't because I'm lazy. All right, so you have corruption. Anyways, so once you hit max level, you don't care about XP debt. right? Like, okay, yeah, it's going to take me some time and resources to go farm a dungeon or a raid, but I don't care if I kill a level 30 player, a level 40 player, because I can just work off that XP debt with a certain amount of grinding. So I think corruption runs into a bit of an issue when it comes to end game content as well, where unless it is so punishing to work off the XP debt, I don't think corruption is going to be a very good way to stop griefers um, from existing at endgame content and max level. And I don't necessarily, me personally, I don't care. I'm a PvP player. I love the idea that you can go around like Tibia and just start killing people, and if you're at risk for losing materials and items and stuff like that, and losing um some stats with stat dampening until you pay off your XP debt, I'm totally fine with that. I actually think the system is relatively lenient on those players. Um but obviously it all depends on like how strong uh it is, and then that'll take balance and that'll take testing, and they're obviously not there yet. So I just want to say this as a big question mark. Oh, that is the worst question mark. I don't even know. I want to save it as like a big question mark, but not like a final say in things, right? You know, like uh, what's the plan here? Is there a plan? You know? And I think that's kind of something that they need to look at. And then when it comes to leveling and corruption in the PvP world, we run into another gear problem here, right? All right, so I'm player 1, level 15. And this is player 2, 25, right? And level 15 gear, level 25, level 25 gear, right? Simple, easy to understand. Obviously, this is not scaled properly, but whatever. So this guy is right here. This guy right here. Naturally, he's stronger, right? So what happens when the level 15 guy, oh, wow, has level 25 gear, and level 25 guy, level 15 gear? Is this possible? That's the first thing I want to know. Is, can you outscale with gear and level? And then if you can't, is there any way for a level 15 player to outplay a level 25 player? Is there any skill involved? Because the thing that I run into as a big issue for me is that gear is a huge, huge cop out for skill. You are essentially, okay, here we go. Here we go. You are essentially making gear stronger than skill just because you put more gold and time into the game. Now, I think skill is something that is often overlooked when talking about vertical progression. Everybody talks about skill like there's a low skill ceiling or low skill floor or whatever, or low skill floor and high skill ceiling for like certain abilities and stuff like that. But we never talk about skill in terms of like vertical progression. So in League, for example, your rank is a form of vertical progression. However, in League, your character progression, um, do this. Your character progression. I know I'm kind of everywhere right now, but this is fine. This is fine. This is time. This is also gold, right? Or no. This is gold. This is time level, right? So you can get level 18 over time when you start off at level 1. And your gold determines the strength of your character, right? That's your vertical progression, because at some point you back with enough gold that you can get stronger, right? So it's not only gold, it's gear as well, right? So gold and gear kind of exist in the vertical progression like this would, right? However, in League, you have your max level, and then skill is necessary here. So if you were to get over your opponent, you have a good team fight, you have a good team fight, you have a good team fight, you're here, right? So you have these certain breakpoints where you have like really good fights that skyrocket you, and then you eventually plateau, right? And then this keeps going so that even when you are max level and max geared on everything, other players and other like the enemy team, I guess since I used red, we'll use blue here. The enemy team can say they're still on a linear progression upwards, but it might take them longer, right? So they could hit level 18 at X minutes in the game because this is the time interval, right? But they still need the gold to get to the high to get how strong they could possibly be. So there is a possibility where you are max level, but not nearly as strong as you can possibly be. And usually games end because of this right here, skill. Skill will generally mean you get more gold, more gear, can end the game faster, and you will end the game. However, that's not always the case. There is comeback mechanics in League. There's ways for you to claw your way back. Maybe your team composition is so well balanced. You're like playing a control deck in card games, and then you just bide your time, and once the game hits a certain point, you're like, it doesn't matter that I'm 10k gold down. Our team is just better, and we win the game that way. So that there are things that allow MOBAs to exist where their vertical and horizontal progression can change quite drastically. In MMOs, you don't really have this because in MOBAs, you always start at level 1. In MMOs, you don't always start at level 1. Well, I mean, you do, but not like in terms of combat. So when we talk about MMOs and their fundamental problem, it's that they use gear as their stat check, and they don't really take into consideration for skill, and they wait until end game content to apply skill. And even when you get end game content, this fundamental aspect can be missing if gear goes nothing but up, and there is no limit, you know? So that's where like battlegrounds arenas and like these PvP modes like this exist where they have a balanced thing where everybody has their thing. They don't have like their engravings or any other bonus things, and everybody has their like PvP gear or whatever. So I guess I hate the fact that your natural progression as a character that you spend so much time on goes to waste in PvP, and it feels very unfair when it comes to gear. And I'm not a mathematician. I don't understand how all these numbers work. I suck at math, which is why I feel like Intrepid for Ashes of Creation need to at least take into consideration, which I'm sure they already are, but I feel like they need to take into progression what leveling is, what type of progression they want to use outside of like nodes and XP debt. And then they also have to think about like general balance when it comes to archetypes, classes, abilities, skill points, uh natural leveling abilities in general, all the way up until endgame content. And then once you reach endgame content, I think the big issue is that you have to limit gear progression. Because if you don't limit gear progression, you're going to run into a problem with Lost Ark where people can't stop. They just won't stop. And new players will feel that it's absolutely imperative that they get to the top level to even enjoy the game, because once you reach this subset of the player base in Lost Ark, you can actually have content to play. However, if you're in any of this section of content in Lost Ark, you're gate kept. And this is natural. Like gatekeeping is natural for the way that Lost Ark was designed, right? So although it's a shitty thing, it's pretty natural. People have time, they want to maximize their time properly. They don't want to spend a ton of time progging. They don't want to help new players because they got to do this on like six different characters, and they just want to get through it fast. They want to get as much gold as possible, and they're doing their weeklies and their dailies, and they're basically no lifing this game, and they don't want to waste time teaching other people how to do things, right? So this whole blue section just gets absolutely neglected, and it's not these people's fault at all. These guys are just doing what's best for them, and it kind of just sucks for these guys. And if you keep endgame content growing vertically, this blue section is going to turn into nobody. That's what your game's going to look like. You're just going to have a whole bunch of people at endgame content, and all of this is useless. So even though you have variable progression, if you don't have people playing, eventually it's just going to go down. There is going to be no progression because nobody's playing your game. So I think this is a topic that's something that they really need to think about when it comes to leveling, endgame content, and endgame leveling, and especially gear score and items. I know it's not supposed to be a balanced game in general. You are going to have people that are better than others. You are going to have people that are going to have better gear. There are going to be some discrepancies. If you don't give the illusion, or at least the ability, to play in a somewhat balanced form, people are just going to lose interest, and that's rather unfortunate, you know? I would like a new player of the game that comes in 6 months in after hearing about Ashes of Creation, how great it is, be able to come in and have fun and not just do horizontal progression, but can do other things as well within the game, learn new classes, archetypes, and stuff like that. And I know that once you reach endgame content in Ashes, you can always make another character, you know? Like, you can always play another class. You can always do other things that will keep the lower level population up. But I don't know. I think this is a very, very serious issue when it comes to MMOs, and I think this is probably the only thing that MMOs really struggle with, in terms of how long and the longevity of a game. And I would say stop caring about gear and care more about this aspect. What makes something skillful? And once you make something skillful, then you will have more fun playing. And yeah, I don't know. I just really, really hate that gear is usually an end all be all in MMOs, and why I don't really play MMOs, because it's such a, it feels like pay to win. It just feels like pay to win to me. So yeah, that's all for me. I've already spoke about this for like over 30 minutes. So thanks all for coming. Thanks for listening to me bitch and moan. I hope to see you all in Alpha 2. If you don't, come check me out on my Twitch channel, Lude Lloyd, Lude with 2 L's. Very, very important. I looked up on Twitter what Lude Lloyd was with 1 L. And let's just say he's got a really nice cock, you know? So make sure that you have 2 L's whenever you look up for something for me, you know? So yeah. Thanks for coming.